The world began with a breath, or so the old tales whispered through the leaves of the ancient trees in Oakhaven Valley. And in Oakhaven, every breath was carried on the Whisperwind. Elara knew the Whisperwind better than she knew the patterns of her own dreams. From the moment she could toddle, her small fingers had reached for the invisible currents that stirred the lace curtains of her nursery window, that made the silver-leaf trees shimmer like 1,000 tiny mirrors, and that carried the scent of pine and damp earth from the whispering woods. Her grandmother, Lyra, a woman whose eyes held the wisdom of 1,000 forgotten dawns, always said Elara had a wind heart, a heart that beat in rhythm with the world's most ancient song. Oakhaven Valley was a bowl of green and gold, cupped by the gentle slopes of the Emberwood Mountains. Its houses, built of warm sun-baked stone and timber, nestled close to the banks of the murmuring river Aire. But it wasn't the river that defined Oakhaven, it was the wind. Not a harsh biting gale, but a constant gentle presence, a living entity that flowed through the valley, bringing with it not just the rustle of leaves or the scent of rain, but something far more profound. The Whisperwind carried stories. These weren't stories spoken aloud, but intricate tapestries of sound, memory, and feeling. A child's forgotten giggle, the echo of a distant melody, the faint hum of a bee's wings from a summer long past, the sorrow of a lost farewell, the joy of a reunion. All these woven into the invisible currents. Only those with a wind heart, like Elara and her grandmother, could truly discern them. For others, it was just the wind, a pleasant breeze on a warm afternoon. Elara's favorite place was the wind-listening porch, a small covered nook built into the south-facing wall of their cottage. It was adorned with countless wind chimes, not the ordinary kind of tinkling metal, but carved from hollowed river reeds, polished moonshells, and slivers of petrified wood from the sunken forest. Each chime had a unique voice, and when the Whisperwind passed through them, they didn't just sing, they spoke. They translated the wind's intricate narratives into audible harmonious patterns that Elara could then interpret. On this particular evening, as the sun dipped below the jagged peaks of the Emberwood Mountains, painting the sky in hues of lavender and apricot, Elara sat cross-legged on the cool stone of the porch. Her long dark hair, the color of a raven's wing, was often tangled by the breezes, but she rarely bothered to tie it back. It felt like an extension of the wind itself, flowing freely. Her eyes, the deep green of moss in a shaded grove, were closed, her head tilted, listening. The chimes were singing a mournful tune tonight. Not a sad tune exactly, but one laced with a subtle anxiety, like a quiet question left unanswered. The moonshell chimes, usually bright and resonant, sounded muted. The reed chimes, typically playful, now seemed hesitant. Even the ancient, deep-toned chimes of petrified wood, which usually carried echoes of the valley's earliest memories, were unusually quiet. Elara frowned. Inane. For weeks he'd noticed a change. The Whisperwind felt thinner, less vibrant. The stories it carried were fragmented, like pages torn from a beloved book. Laughter seemed to fade before its echo could fully form. Ancient wisdom was abruptly cut short. It was a subtle shift, one her parents, kind and practical folk who managed the valley's apple orchards, hadn't noticed. Her grandmother, however, had. "The wind is troubled, little one," Lyra had murmured just yesterday, her voice as soft as the rustle of dry leaves. She had been sitting by the hearth, weaving a blanket of spun cloud silk, her gnarled fingers moving with a quiet grace. It's like a memory trying to form, but unable to fully grasp itself. Elara had nodded, her own heart echoing the sentiment. It feels incomplete, as if a thread has come loose from the great tapestry. Perhaps, Lyra had said, her gaze fixed on the dancing flames. It is a thread that needs to be rewoven, or found again. Tonight, the feeling was stronger. Elara opened her eyes, watching the last sliver of sun vanish. A cool gust swept through the valley, making the silver-leaf trees shiver. But it felt empty. It carried no story, only the chill of the coming night. A strange, unfamiliar silence settled over the valley, a silence where the Whisperwind usually sang. Concern pricked at her. This wasn't just a quiet night, it was an absence. The very soul of Oakhaven seemed to be holding its breath. She rose, walking to the edge of the porch, letting the wind tug at her hair. She extended her hand, palm open, trying to feel for the familiar currents the subtle vibrations that signaled a story. Nothing. Just cool air. She walked inside, the familiar warmth of their cottage a small comfort against the growing unease in her heart. Her mother, Elara, was stirring a pot of fragrant mushroom stew over the hearth, humming a wordless tune. Her father, Theron, was mending a leather harness by the light of a glowworm lamp. They looked up as she entered, their faces kind and welcoming. "Any new tales from the wind, Elara?" her father asked, his voice warm. He wasn't a wind listener, but he respected Elara's gift, often asking about the wind's moods, using her insights to predict weather for the orchards. Elara hesitated, choosing her words carefully. "It's quiet tonight, Da, very quiet." She didn't want to worry them with her deeper concerns, her intuition that something was truly amiss. Her mother glanced at her, a knowing look in her eyes. A quiet wind can be a good thing sometimes. A rest, even the wind needs to sleep. Elara managed a small smile, but inside, she knew this wasn't the restful silence her mother spoke of. This was an unnatural hush, a strained quiet. After dinner, as the fire crackled and the glowworm lamps cast soft pools of light, Elara found her grandmother in her usual spot by the hearth. Lyra's hands, usually busy with weaving or carving, were still, resting on her lap. She was gazing into the embers, her expression far away. "Grandmother," Elara began, her voice barely a whisper. "The wind. It isn't sleeping. It feels lost." Lyra's eyes, ancient and wise, turned to her. A flicker of deep concern passed through them. "You feel it too, child. I knew you would. It has been fading for weeks, but tonight, it is almost gone." Elara sat on a low stool beside her, the firelight dancing across their faces. "What does it mean? Has this ever happened before?" Lyra sighed, a sound like dry leaves skittering across stone. "Not in my lifetime, nor my mother's, nor her mother's. The Whisperwind has always been the heart of Oakhaven, the breath of this valley. If it truly falters, the consequences could be grave." "What kind of consequences?" Elara pressed, a knot forming in her stomach. "The wind carries more than just stories, Elara. It carries the essence of memory, the threads that bind us to our past. Without it, the valley could begin to forget itself. The trees might lose their ancient wisdom, the river might forget its course. The very stones might lose their connection to the earth. Oakhaven would become an empty shell." Lyra's voice was heavy with a sorrow Elara had rarely heard. A chill colder than any draft snaked up Elara's spine. Oakhaven without the Whisperwind was unthinkable. It was like imagining a world without color or sound. But why now? Elara asked. What could make it fade? Lyra shook her head slowly. The old legends speak of a time when the Whisperwind was born, from the very first breath of the world. They also speak of the Heartstone of Eredor, a mythical gem said to be the anchor of the wind, hidden deep within the Emberwood Mountains. It is whispered that if the Heartstone is ever disturbed or its light dimmed, the Whisperwind would wait. Elara's eyes widened. The Heartstone of Eredor? I thought that was just a story, a bedtime tale. Many stories hold grains of truth, little one, and when the world itself cries out, we must listen to those grains. Lyra reached out, her hand, surprisingly strong, closing over Elara's. You have a wind heart, Elara. Perhaps you are meant to listen more closely than anyone else. The implication hung in the air, heavy and unspoken. Was her grandmother suggesting Keoakshe should do something? A young girl, barely a teenager? But what could I do? Elara asked, her voice small. I only listen. To listen, truly listen, is a powerful magic in itself, Lyra countered softly. The wind calls to you. Can you not feel it? Even in its silence it calls. Elara closed her eyes, trying to reach out with her wind heart. And there it was. Not a story, not a song, but a faint, almost imperceptible tug. A direction. A yearning. It was like a thread, invisible but palpable, pulling her towards the highest peaks of the Emberwood Mountains, towards the very source of the valley's breath. I feel it, she whispered, opening her eyes. A pull, towards the high peaks. A faint smile touched Lyra's lips. Then the Whisperwind has not entirely forgotten its way. It still has hope. And perhaps it has chosen you, to be its guide. The words settled deep within Elara, a mixture of fear and a strange, burgeoning excitement. She, Elara, the quiet listener, was being called upon by the very essence of her home. The next morning, the valley was shrouded in an unusual mist, thick and clinging. It was a mist that didn't smell of rain or dew, but of old secrets and forgotten paths. The silverleaf trees were muted, their shimmer dulled. The usual morning chorus of birds was subdued. Elara rose early, her decision made. She would go. She would seek the heartstone of Erador, or, at least, she would follow the whisper of the wind's call. She packed a small satchel, a waterskin, a few dried apple slices from their orchard, a small flint and steel, and a coil of sturdy hemp rope. Her most precious item, however, was a small, hollowed-out moonshell chime, no bigger than her thumb, which her grandmother had given her years ago. It was said to be able to capture the faintest whispers, even those too subtle for the ear. She dressed in sturdy leather breeches and a thick wool tunic, her walking boots laced tight. She knew the paths around Oakhaven well, but the high peaks of the Ember Woods were wild, untamed. She had never ventured far beyond the borders of the Whispering Woods, which marked the edge of the familiar valley. Her parents were already up, eating a quiet breakfast. Elara walked over to them, her heart thrumming. "Mother, father," she said, her voice steadier than she felt. "I need to go into the mountains today, to the higher paths." Her mother, who had been pouring berry juice, paused, her hand hovering over the jug. Her father looked up, his brow furrowing. "The mountains, Elara? Why? The mists are thick and the paths are treacherous beyond the Whispering Woods." "The Whisperwind is fading," Elara said, looking from one concerned face to the other. "Grandmother and we feel it. It's not just quiet, it's unwell. And I believe I know where I need to go to understand why." Her mother's gaze softened, understanding dawning. She knew of Elara's unique connection, even if she couldn't share it. She looked at Theron, who, after a long moment, nodded slowly. "Lyra spoke to me last night," he said, his voice quiet. "She believes in your Windheart, and so do I. But be careful, little breeze. Take your father's old hiking staff. It has seen many a mountain path." He retrieved a gnarled, polished staff of ashwood from beside the hearth. It was taller than Elara, but perfectly balanced, its top carved with a swirling wind pattern. Elara took it, feeling its comforting weight in her hands. "Thank you," she said, a wave of gratitude washing over her. "I will be careful." Her mother hugged her tightly, pressing the small pouch into her hand. "For extra rations, my love, and a warm heart to guide your way." With a deep breath, Elara stepped out into the swirling mist. The valley was silent, save for the distant murmur of the river air. The chimes on the wind listening porch were utterly still, not a single note escaping them. It was unnerving. She followed the familiar dirt track that led out of Oakhaven, past the gnarled apple trees of their orchard, their branches laden with slumbering fruit. The path soon narrowed, winding deeper into the Whispering Woods. Here, the mist was even thicker, weaving through the ancient oaks and pines like ghostly fingers. The trees were magnificent, their branches reaching up like skeletal arms towards the unseen sky. It was said these trees remembered the earliest days of Oakhaven, their roots intertwined with the valley's deepest secrets. As she walked, Elara kept her senses alert, her hand resting on the ash staff. The forest floor was soft with centuries of fallen leaves and moss. The air was cool and damp. She listened for the subtle pull, the faint yearning that the Whisperwind had shown her. It was still there, a delicate thread guiding her through the swirling gray. The Whispering Woods had always been a place of comfort for Elara, a sanctuary where the wind sang its most ancient songs through the leaves. But today, it felt different. The usual rustle and sigh of the wind through the canopy was absent. The woods felt hushed, expectant. She passed the ancient stone circle, where the valley folk sometimes gathered for solstice celebrations. The stones, usually humming with latent magic, felt cold and inert under the mist. Even they seemed to be holding their breath. After an hour or so of walking, the ground began to rise more steeply. The trees thinned, giving way to rockier terrain, dotted with hardy mountain pines and clumps of purple heather. This was the edge of the familiar, the beginning of the Emberwood Mountains proper. The mist here was less a shroud and more a veil, clinging to the crags and peaks, obscuring the path ahead. Elara paused, taking a deep breath of the crisp mountain air. The wind, though still faint, felt stronger here, a subtle current pulling her upwards. She adjusted her satchel, clutched her staff, and began her ascent. The path was narrow, winding along the edge of a steep drop. The mist made it difficult to see more than a few feet ahead, turning the familiar landscape into a series of vague, shifting shapes. She relied on the subtle tug of the Whisperwind, moving slowly, carefully, testing each step. After what felt like hours, the terrain flattened slightly, leading her into a small, secluded hollow. Here, the mist seemed to swirl and coalesce, taking on a luminous, almost pearlescent quality. In the center of the hollow stood a single, enormous tree, unlike any Elara had ever seen. Its bark was the color of moonlight on snow, its leaves a shimmering, ethereal silver, even in the dull light of the mist. It stood taller than any other tree in the mountains, its branches reaching upwards as if trying to touch the sky itself. This was the moon silver tree, an ancient sentinel whispered about in nursery rhymes, said to be a gateway between the earth and the heavens. It was believed to be a place where the Whisperwind gathered its strength before descending into the valley. As Elara approached, a faint, almost imperceptible hum filled the air. It wasn't sound exactly, but a vibration, a resonance that tingled on her skin. The luminous mist swirled more rapidly around the moon-silver tree, creating a soft, pulsing glow. She reached into her satchel and pulled out her grandmother's small moonshell chime. Holding it out, she waited. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then, a single, tiny, almost inaudible note emerged from the chime, a sound so delicate it felt like it could shatter. It was the faintest echo of the Whisperwind, a fragile breath, a plea. And then, from the moon-silver tree itself, a whisper. Not a story, but a single ancient word, carried on the faintest current of air. It wasn't a word Elara understood with her mind, but with her wind heart. It was a direction. Handihawartedo, north. And another, more urgent feeling. Higher. Nanwantadandhinden. The moon-silver tree was pointing her deeper into the mountains, towards the true peaks, towards the source. The Whisperwind wasn't entirely lost. It was calling for help, guiding her to where its very essence was fading. Elara took a deep breath, clutching the small chime, and looked up at the mist-shrouded peaks, the true wilderness of the Emberwood Mountains. Her journey had only just begun. The air grew thinner with every upward step, carrying a crisp, cold bite that nipped at Elara's nose and ears. The mist, which had been a gentle veil in the lower valleys, now clung to the jagged rock faces like a damp shroud, swirling around her, making the world seem to shrink to a few feet in every direction. The Emberwood Mountains were truly wild up here, their ancient, craggy peaks hidden behind the shifting gray. Her journey began with the slow, rhythmic crunch of her boots on scree, and the occasional damp moss. The forest, which had been her constant companion, quickly thinned out, giving way to sparse, gnarled pines clinging stubbornly to impossible slopes, their branches coated in rime. Then even they vanished, replaced by hardy lichens and patches of frost-kissed heather. The climb was relentless, demanding every ounce of strength and focus. The small chime, clutched in her hand, grew strangely warm, almost humming with a faint vibration that seemed to match the thrum of her own wind heart. The Whisperwind's call was no longer a vague yearning. It was a delicate, almost mournful song, a melody of fading light and distant echoes. It pulled her north, yes, but even more strongly, it urged her higher. The feeling was one of urgency, a quiet desperation that settled deep in her chest. Hours bled into one another. Elara climbed past waterfalls frozen mid-cascade, their icy tendrils glittering in the muted light that pierced the mist. She skirted precipitous drops where the wind, even without the Whisperwind's magic, howled like a hungry beast. Her muscles ached, her breath came in ragged puffs, but the internal compass of her wind heart never wavered. Each gust of wind, each shift in the mist, felt like a whisper of encouragement, a breath of the fading magic guiding her onward. She found herself in a landscape of stark, majestic beauty. Enormous boulders, worn smooth by eons of wind and ice, balanced precariously on slopes. Patches of snow, old and hard-packed, lay in shadowed hollows. The silence here was profound, broken only by the sigh of the wind and the distant cry of a mountain hawk, a sound that seemed to carry for miles in the thin air. It was a silence that felt ancient, weighty, as if the mountains themselves held their breath. As dusk began to paint the mist with shades of lavender and steel gray, Elara reached a narrow winding path carved into the side of a massive granite cliff. Below her, the world dropped away into a dizzying abyss. Above, the path disappeared into a perpetually swirling cloud. The air here was noticeably colder, and the faint, melancholic song of the Whisperwind grew stronger, clearer, tinged with a delicate, fragile quality, like a crystal bell about to shatter. Suddenly, a flicker of movement caught her eye. At the edge of the path, where the mist curled thickest, a small, squat figure sat hunched, seemingly carved from the very rock itself. It was no taller than her knee, its body covered in gray-green moss, with small, intelligent eyes that gleamed like polished pebbles. Two tiny, gnarled hands, tipped with miniature crystalline claws, rested on its knees. It looked ancient, patient, and utterly still. Elara paused, her hand instinctively going to the small, smooth stone she carried in her pocket, a comfort she'd picked up from the moon-silver tree. "Hello?" she ventured, her voice a little shaky in the vast quiet. The creature's head, which seemed to be made of a single rounded stone, slowly turned towards her. Its eyes, deep-set and wise, regarded her with an unnerving intensity. A low, rumbling sound, like pebbles shifting, emanated from its chest. "A breath seeker," it rumbled, its voice surprisingly deep, a sound that seemed to come from the very earth itself. Few venture this high, fewer still carry the song in their heart. Elara's eyes widened. "You know about the Whisperwind?" The Stone Whisperer, as she instinctively named it, nodded slowly. "We know many things. We are the memory of the stone. The roots of the mountains are our veins. The wind is our breath, though not ours to command." It paused, its gaze sweeping over her, lingering on the chime in her hand. "You seek the source, the heart of the Whisperwind." "Yes," Elara confirmed, feeling a surge of hope. "It's fading. I can feel it. The moon-silver tree sent me." A sigh like dry leaves rustling escaped the Stone Whisperer. "The Whisperwind. It is not fading, little breath-seeker. It is being silenced, its song stolen, note by precious note." Silenced? By what? Elara felt a chill that had nothing to do with the mountain air. "By the deep draught," the creature explained, its voice growing gravely. "A hunger that sleeps beneath the highest peaks. It feeds on the purest of energies, the most vibrant of songs, and the Whisperwind. Its song is as pure as newly fallen snow, as vibrant as the spring's first bloom." "The deep draught," Elara repeated, the name tasting like ash in her mouth. "How do I stop it? How do I help the Whisperwind?" The Stone Whisperer shifted, a faint grinding sound accompanying a movement. "The deep draught cannot be stopped by force, little one. It is part of the mountains, a dark echo of their ancient power. But it can be directed. It seeks vibrancy. It seeks light. It seeks a different song." It rose slowly, its moss-covered form surprisingly agile. "Follow this path," it instructed, pointing a gnarled finger, its crystalline claw glinting towards the swirling mist above. "It leads to the Whispering Pass. Beyond that, the echoing tarn. And beyond that, the heart of the silence. Be wary of the illusions woven by the draft hunger. They are meant to confuse, to deter, to drain your own light." "Illusions?" Elara questioned, a knot of unease tightening in her stomach. "Reflections of your deepest fears, your strongest desires?" the Stone Whisperer rumbled. "They feed on your energy, just as the draft feeds on the wind's song. Hold tight to your own true self. And remember," it paused, its ancient eyes fixing on hers, "the purest light often reveals the darkest truths. Your chime, it may help you see." With that cryptic warning, the Stone Whisperer melted back into the shadows of the cliff face, becoming indistinguishable from the rock and moss, leaving Elara alone once more with the cold wind and the fading song of the Whisperwind. Taking a deep breath, Elara clutched the chime tighter, its warmth a small comfort. She stepped onto the narrow path, the words of the Stone Whisperer echoing in her mind. Silenced, not fading. Deep draught. Illusions. Her journey had just become far more perilous. The Whispering Pass lived up to its name. The wind, funneled through the narrow defile between two enormous peaks, seemed to carry 1,000 voices. It wasn't the sweet, clear song of the Whisperwind, but a cacophony of sighs, moans, and whispers that seemed to claw at the edges of Elara's mind. Each gust felt like a question, each moan a doubt. The mist here was so dense it was like walking through a cloud, visibility dropping to mere inches. Elara pressed on, her hand brushing against the cold, smooth rock of the pass. The chime in her hand vibrated more intensely now, almost buzzing. As she moved deeper, the whispers grew clearer, more insidious. "You are lost!" hissed a voice that sounded like her own but colder. "Turn back, little girl. This is not your fight. The Whisperwind is already gone. You are too late. You will only bring more harm." Fear, cold and sharp, pricked at Elara's resolve. She remembered the Stone Whisperer's warning, the illusions woven by the draft's hunger. Reflections of your deepest fears. She closed her eyes, focusing on the warmth of the chime, on the faint, true song of the Whisperwind still echoing in her heart. She imagined her wind heart beating, strong and steady, pushing away the doubt. "No," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the wind's din. "I am not lost. I am here to help." She opened her eyes. The whispers still clawed at her, but she noticed something new. Where the mist was thickest, she saw fleeting shapes, a familiar face from her village, shaking their head in disappointment, a looming shadow of a creature with glowing red eyes, ready to pounce. These were not solid, but shimmers, like heat rising from hot stone. "You are weak. You are afraid." "I am brave," Elara declared, her voice growing stronger. "I carry the wind in my heart." She held the chime out before her. As if in response to her conviction, the chime pulsed with a soft silvery light, pushing back against the oppressive mist. The light, though faint, seemed to reveal the illusions for what they were, shimmering, insubstantial veils. They recoiled from the chime's glow, hissing like steam. She pressed forward, the chime her beacon, its light a shield against the creeping fear. The Whispering Pass seemed to stretch on endlessly, a tunnel of doubt and confusion. But with each step, Elara felt her resolve solidify. She was not just a girl from the valley, she was a breath seeker, a listener to the wind, and she would not be swayed. Finally, after what felt like an age, the pass began to widen. The oppressive whispers receded, replaced by the natural roar of the wind. The mist, though still thick, began to thin, revealing glimpses of the landscape ahead. She emerged onto a vast high plateau, desolate and breathtaking. Before her, nestled in a bowl of ice-carved rock, lay the echoing tarn. Its surface was a sheet of obsidian dark ice, perfectly smooth, reflecting the dim, shrouded sky like a polished mirror. No ripples disturbed its ancient stillness. Around its edges, jagged ice formations, like frozen teeth, rose towards the sky. The cold here was intense, a deep, bone-aching chill that seemed to emanate from the tarn itself. But it was not the ice that held Elara's gaze. It was the sound. Or rather, the lack of it. The Whisperwind's song, which had been a clear, albeit mournful, melody just moments ago, was now almost completely absent. Only the faintest, most fragile echo remained, a whisper so soft it was almost imperceptible, like a dream forgotten upon waking. This was the heart of the silence the Stone Whisperer had spoken of. Elara carefully picked her way across the icy ground towards the tarn's edge. Her boots crunched on hoarfrost, the only sound in the profound quiet. As she drew closer, she noticed something peculiar about the ice. Beneath the surface, swirling patterns of gray and black seemed to writhe, like shadows trapped within the frozen water. And in the very center of the tarn, a faint, almost invisible pulsation seemed to emanate from the depths. This was it. This was where the deep draught slumbered, beneath the silent ice, consuming the song of the Whisperwind. She knelt at the edge of the tarn, placing her hand on the impossibly cold surface. The chill seeped into her bones, but she focused, closing her eyes, reaching out with her wind heart. The faint echo of the Whisperwind was here, yes, but it felt muffled, suppressed, like a light struggling to shine through layers of thick cloth. It was a feeling of suffocation, of a vibrant spirit being slowly, agonizingly, extinguished. The chime in her hand was now throbbing with a steady, strong pulse, its silvery light illuminating the ice beneath her palm. As the light touched the dark patterns beneath the surface, they seemed to writhe more intensely, as if disturbed from a deep slumber. It seeks vibrancy. It seeks light. It seeks a different song. The stone whisperer's words came back to her. Elara thought about the moon-silver tree, its shimmering leaves, its deep, resonant song. She thought about the laughter of the river in the valley, the rustle of leaves in a summer breeze, the gentle sigh of the wind through the eaves of her home. All vibrant. All full of life. The deep draught was consuming the Whisperwind because its song was the purest, the most direct manifestation of these energies. What could she offer that was a why different a song, yet equally vibrant? Something that wouldn't be consumed, but would be shatty or higher direct. She looked at the chime in her hand, then at the moon-silver tree's seed, nestled safely in her pocket. The seed pulsed with a faint inner warmth, a different kind of magic, growth, renewal, life itself. But the stone whisperer had spoken of enchanting. Elara closed her eyes again, reaching deeper within herself. She didn't just hear the wind, she felt it. She felt the way it danced, the way it lifted, the way it carried seeds and whispers across valleys. She felt its joy, its sorrow, its endless journey. The Whisperwind was a song of movement, of freedom, of connection. What was her own song? What was the song of Elara, the girl with the wind heart? She thought of the stories her grandmother used to tell, the lullabies sung by the hearth, the simple, comforting melodies that marked the passing of seasons in her village. These were songs of home, of belonging, of human connection. They weren't the wild, untamed song of the Whisperwind, but they were vibrant in their own way, full of warmth and memory. A sudden realization sparked within her. The deep draught fed on the purest energies. Perhaps it was overwhelmed by them, unable to process their raw intensity, like trying to drink from a rushing river with a tiny cup. What if it needed something gentler, something that could guide its hunger, rather than simply satisfy it? She pulled the chime up to her lips and blew softly. A single, clear note, delicate as spun glass, resonated in the frigid air. It was a note of pure, unadulterated sound, a miniature echo of the moon-silver tree's melody. She blew again, a little stronger. Another note, then another, weaving them together. She wasn't trying to mimic the Whisperwind. She was creating her haunting song, a melody born of her heart, her journey, her connection to both the wildness of the mountains and the warmth of her home. It was a song of quiet courage, of determined hope, of gentle strength. As the notes drifted across the echoing tarn, something began to stir. The swirling shadows beneath the ice pulsed more rapidly, but this time it felt different. Not aggressive, but curious. The faint, almost extinguished echo of the Whisperwind seemed to brighten, ever so slightly, as if listening intently. Elara continued to play, her fingers dancing lightly on the chime, coaxing out a melody that was simple, yet deeply resonant. It was a song that spoke of quiet forests, of sunlight filtering through leaves, of the steadfast love of a family. It was the song of her world, woven with threads of wind and starlight. As the melody swelled, a faint, silvery light began to emanate from the chime itself, spreading across the surface of the ice. The dark, writhing patterns beneath the tarn seemed to recede, drawing back from the light, not in fear, but as if adjusting to a new sensation. And then, a faint hum began to rise from the very center of the tarn, a low thrumming that grew steadily stronger, resonating with Elara's chime. It was not the Whisperwind's song, but something deeper, older, a sound of immense power. It was the deep draught, stirring from its slumber, acknowledging her presence, her offering. The hum grew into a deep resonance that vibrated through the ice, through the ground, and into Elara's very bones. It was a sound that commanded respect, a primordial force. She felt its hunger, a vast empty ache, but also, surprisingly, a flicker of something akin to curiosity. Her song, her gentle offering, was catching its attention. She kept playing, pouring all her focus, all her hope, into the melody. The silvery light from the chime pulsed, illuminating the entire tarn, pushing back the shadows, revealing the true, pristine beauty of the ice. The air around her grew warmer, not from any fire, but from the sheer energy of the moment. Suddenly a fissure, thin as a spider web, appeared in the center of the ice, spreading outward. It wasn't a crack of destruction, but of release. From the fissure, a soft emerald green light began to emanate, swirling upwards like mist. It was accompanied by a sound, faint at first, then growing clearer, the true, pure song of the Whisperwind, no longer muffled, no longer fading, but flowing out into the mountain air, delicate and free. It was not yet whole, not yet at its full strength, but it was zither. The deep draught had acknowledged her song, and in doing so, had released its hold on a portion of the Whisperwind. Elara felt a surge of exhilaration, but also a deeper understanding. The deep draught wasn't evil. It was simply a force of nature, a primal hunger. And like any hunger, it could be guided. She stopped playing, the last note of her song echoing across the tarn, mingling with the emerald light and the Whisperwind's gentle resurgence. The deep hum from the tarn softened, settling into a quiescent rumble, still present, but no longer consuming. The green light pulsed rhythmically, a beacon of renewed hope. She had found the heart of the silence, and with her own song, she had begun to awaken the slumbering Whisperwind. But the work was not yet done. The deep draught still slept beneath the ice, its hunger merely sated for now. She had offered a different song, a path of redirection, but how could she ensure it would continue to choose that path, to feed it on something other than the Whisperwind's essence? Elara looked up, past the echoing tarn towards the highest peaks, still shrouded in mist, still beckoning. The moon-silver tree's seed in her pocket felt warm, a silent promise. She had cleared a path, awakened a part of the wind, but the true challenge lay ahead. To find a lasting solution to give the deep draught a new, sustainable source of vibrancy, a song that would forever draw its hunger away from the Whisperwind. Her journey, she knew, was far from over. Elara looked up, past the echoing tarn towards the highest peaks, still shrouded in mist, still beckoning. The moon-silver tree's seed in her pocket felt warm, a silent promise. She had cleared a path, awakened a part of the wind, but the true challenge lay ahead, to find a lasting solution, to give the deep draught a new sustainable source of vibrancy, a song that would forever draw its hunger away from the Whisperwind. Her journey, she knew, was far from over. With a deep, steadying breath, Elara turned her back on the shimmering waters of the tarn, and began her ascent. The path, which had been clear and welcoming through the lower valleys, soon grew faint, swallowed by ancient moss and the gnarled roots of trees that clung stubbornly to the mountain slopes. The air grew cooler, carrying the scent of damp earth and pine, and the mist, which had seemed a distant shroud, now swirled around her, a living, breathing presence. She moved with a quiet determination, her sturdy boots finding purchase on slick stones and hidden ledges. The Whisperwind, now more attuned to her presence, seemed to dance around her, not pushing, but gently guiding, rustling the leaves of the ancient everfirs to reveal a clearer step, or parting a veil of mist to show a glimpse of the winding path ahead. Each gust carried a faint, almost melodic hum, a soft song of reassurance that resonated deep within her. As she climbed higher, the landscape transformed. The vibrant greens of the valley gave way to the muted silver and gray of granite, softened by blankets of luminous glimmer moss that pulsed with a gentle inner light in the dimness of the mist. Strange, spire-like crystals, known as echoing shards, began to emerge from the rock faces, catching the diffused light and humming with a faint, resonant music when the wind passed through them. Elara found herself pausing often, not from weariness, but from sheer wonder, touching a hand to a crystalline spire, feeling the ancient vibrations pulse through her fingertips. One afternoon, as the sun dipped below a distant ridge, painting the mist in hues of rose and lavender, Elara found herself at the edge of a narrow, twisting gorge. The Whisperwind grew agitated here, swirling faster, the hum in its currents urgent. Peering into the depths, she saw that the gorge was not empty, but filled with a tangle of thorn-like vines, thick as her arm, their thorns gleaming with a dull, unsettling purple light. These were the shadow thorns, creatures of the deep mountain, known to drain warmth and light from anything that touched them. They pulsed with a slow, rhythmic beat, like a slumbering heart, blocking the only visible way forward. Elara knew she couldn't simply walk through them. Her awakened connection to the Whisperwind offered a solution. She closed her eyes, focusing on the warmth of the moon-silver seed in her pocket, and the gentle song of the wind around her. She pictured the thorny tangle, then imagined the Whisperwind, not as a destructive force, but as a sculptor of air, a weaver of currents. With a deep breath, she extended her hands, and the wind around her responded. It began as a soft sigh, then grew into a focused, swirling vortex, not violent, but precise. The Whisperwind coiled around the shadow thorns, not tearing them, but creating a funnel of pure, vital air. The purple thorns, deprived of the stagnant, heavy air they thrived on, began to shrivel, their malevolent glow fading. Slowly, carefully, the wind carved a narrow, shimmering tunnel through the heart of the thorny mass. It took all of Elara's concentration, beads of sweat trickling down her temples, but when she opened her eyes, a clear, if tight, passage stretched before her, glowing faintly with the lingering essence of the Whisperwind. Stepping through the ephemeral tunnel, Elara felt a renewed sense of purpose. The mountains were not just physical obstacles, they were living beings, challenging her, teaching her, and responding to her growing power. The moon-silver seed pulsed with a stronger warmth now, as if acknowledging her progress. Higher still, the trees thinned, giving way to windswept plateaus and jagged peaks that pierced the sky. The air was thin and crisp, carrying the distant cry of a skyhawk. Days turned into nights, each bringing new wonders. Constellations of unfamiliar stars blazing in the ink-black sky, the silent dance of the aurora borealis, weaving ribbons of color across the northern horizon. Elara slept in sheltered hollows, warmed by the seed and the gentle embrace of the Whisperwind, dreaming of the ancient magic that surely awaited her. Finally, after what felt like an age of climbing, she reached a vast, circular plateau, higher than any other peak she had seen. The mist here was different. It wasn't a swirling veil, but a still, ethereal expanse, glowing with a soft internal luminescence. In the very center of the plateau, rising from a bed of smooth obsidian-like stone, stood a single immense structure. It was not a building, nor a natural formation, but something in between. A colossal, crystalline spire, spiraling upwards into the luminous mist, its surface shimmering with every color imaginable. It seemed to hum with a silent, profound energy, radiating a sense of ancient peace and immense power. This was the Cloud Spinner's Eyrie, a place spoken of in whispered legends, a nexus where the world's breath met the sky's song. As Elara approached, the moon-silver seed in her pocket vibrated intensely, a deep, resonant hum that she felt in her very bones. The crystalline spire, she realized, was not solid, but formed of countless interwoven strands of what looked like solidified light, constantly shifting, braiding, and unbraiding, like an immense silent loom. From within the heart of this living crystal emerged a figure. It was tall and slender, composed entirely of the same luminous mist that filled the plateau, yet possessing a distinct form. Its eyes, deep pools of starlight, regarded Elara with an ancient wisdom and a gentle kindness. Its movements were fluid, like the drift of a cloud, and its voice, when it spoke, was a soft, resonant whisper that seemed to echo not in the air, but directly in Elara's mind. "Welcome, young heart of the wind," the Cloud Spinner elder said, its voice a symphony of rustling leaves and distant starlight. "You have ascended the breath of the world. The warmth of the moon-silver seed tells me of your purpose." Elara, awestruck, managed to nod. "I seek a lasting solution for the deep draught," she explained, her own voice sounding small in the vastness of the plateau. "A song to draw its hunger away from the Whisperwind forever." The Cloud Spinner elder drifted closer, its form shimmering. "Indeed, the deep draught is not malevolent, child, but a fundamental force of the world's balance. It is the deep earth's own hunger, its need for vibrant energy to maintain the flow of life beneath the soil, to nourish the roots of mountains and rivers. For millennia it drew from the Whisperwind, a delicate balance that was always precarious. But as the world changed, as the ancient groves fell silent and the songs of the first folk faded, the Whisperwind grew weaker. Its essence too in the deep. "So the Whisperwind is dying because of it?" Elara asked, a pang of sorrow in her chest. "Not dying, but fading," the elder corrected gently. "Its song grows faint, and a world without the Whisperwind's breath would be a world without dreams, without inspiration, without the very pulse of creation that stirs in every living thing." The elder gestured towards the shimmering spire. "You speak of a song. You are closer to the truth than you know. The deep draught does not merely consume energy. It craves a specific resonance, a vibrational hum that resonates with the very heart of creation. We call it the resonance of the Ethereum. Elara frowned. The Ethereum? It is the pure, vibrant hum of creation itself, the elder explained, its starlight eyes gleaming. It permeates the fabric of all things, the silent chorus that binds the stars and awakens the first sprout of spring. It is the deepest, purest form of life's energy, constantly renewing, constantly vibrant, and it is the only true, sustainable source for the deep draught. But where can I find this resonance? Elara asked, her heart quickening with hope. And how can it be given to the deep draught? The elder turned its luminous gaze towards the moon-silver seed Elara still held, its warmth now almost a gentle heat in her palm. The seed you carry is not merely a seed, young heart. It is a dormant conduit, a living vessel designed by the first weavers of magic. The moon-silver tree, when fully grown and awakened, is a magnificent antenna, capable of drawing the resonance of the Ethereum from the deepest layers of the sky and the highest vibrations of the Ethereum. It filters this pure energy, making it safe and accessible, then releases it as a gentle, continuous song, the very song the deep draught craves. Elara looked from the seed to the elder, then back to the seed. So I need to plant this tree. Indeed, the elder confirmed. But not just anywhere. The resonance of the Ethereum is strongest, most accessible, in places where the veil between worlds is thinnest, where the celestial and terrestrial energies meet in perfect harmony. This area is one such place, a point of observation, but not the source itself. For the moon-silver tree to truly awaken and draw the Ethereum's full song, it must be planted in the Jaskai Mirror Caldera. The elder drifted to the edge of the plateau, its misty form stretching out a hand towards a distant shimmering peak, barely visible through the perpetual luminous mist. Beyond these peaks, hidden in a valley that cups the clouds, lies the caldera. It is a vast, ancient lake, its waters so still and clear, they perfectly reflect the heavens above, drawing down the celestial energies. Beneath its surface, geothermal vents release pure elemental energy from the Earth's core. It is the perfect, but the caldera is said to be guarded, Elara mused, remembering faint tales of its hidden power. And its waters are perilous. True, the elder conceded. The caldera is a place of immense power, and such places often have their own protectors, their own trials. The waters are indeed perilous to those who seek to exploit them, but to a heart of pure intention, guided by the Whisperwind and carrying the promise of the moon-silver tree, they will reveal their secrets, not their dangers. The cloud spinner elder then extended a hand, and from its misty palm, a single, iridescent feather, spun from solidified moonlight, drifted towards Elara. Take this, young heart. It is a feather of the Sky Singer. It will guide you through the remaining mists and across the treacherous paths that lead to the Sky Mirror Caldera. More than that, it will allow you to breathe freely in the thin air of the highest altitudes and grant you clarity of sight, even in the deepest fogs. And when you reach the caldera, it will help you find the precise spot where the moon-silver seed must be planted, for the tree to draw its fullest song. Elara reverently took the feather. It felt cool and light in her hand, pulsing with a faint silvery warmth. A sense of profound gratitude washed over her. Thank you, elder. I will not fail. You carry the whisper of hope, Elara, the elder replied, its form beginning to subtly recede into the crystalline spire. The world is waiting for the moon-silver tree's song, for the vibrant hum of the Ethereum to flow once more, calming the deep draught's hunger and restoring the Whisperwind's voice. The path ahead is challenging, but you are not alone. The wind is with you, and the very heart of the mountains watches your journey. As the cloud spinner elder's form dissolved completely into the shimmering spire, Elara felt a renewed surge of strength and purpose. She now understood the true nature of the deep draught, the vital role of the moon-silver tree, and the specific destination that held the key. The seed in her pocket felt like a beacon, the sky singer's feather a compass. She looked out from the cloud spinner's eyrie, past the luminous mist, towards the distant, hazy outline of the sky mirror, caldera. The path was clearer now, though no less daunting. She had a destination, a purpose, and the tools she needed. But the journey to the caldera, the planting of the seed, and the awakening of the moon-silver tree's song, felt like the beginning of an even greater adventure. Her heart thrummed with the Whisperwind's promise, ready for the next challenge, ready to bring the song of the Ethereum back to the world. The path was clearer now, though no less daunting. She had a destination, a purpose, and the tools she needed. But the journey to the caldera, the planting of the seed, and the awakening of the moon-silver tree's song felt like the beginning of an even greater adventure. Her heart thrummed with the Whisperwind's promise, ready for the next challenge, ready to bring the song of the Ethereum back to the world. Elara adjusted the satchel on her shoulder. The moon-silver seed nestled safely within a pouch of dream moss. The air grew thinner, crisper, carrying the scent of ancient stone and distant snow. The luminous mist, which had been a gentle companion lower down, now swirled in vast silent oceans around the craggy peaks of the Whisperwind range. These mountains were not like any she had known. Their summits seemed to pierce the veil between worlds, brushing against the very stars. Days turned into nights, marked by the celestial dance above the jagged silhouettes of the peaks. Elara climbed, her steps guided by an innate sense of direction and the subtle pull of the seed within her satchel. The Whisperwind, no longer just a breeze, became a presence, a gentle current that nudged her towards hidden passages and smoothed the sharp edges of her weariness. It carried whispers of ancient songs, faint echoes from a time when the Ethereum's melody flowed freely. She navigated treacherous ledges where only the surest foot could tread, her moon-silver thread an invaluable aid, casting a faint reassuring glow in the deepening twilight. She slept in small, sheltered caves, wrapped in her cloak, the dream moss a soft cushion beneath her head, filling her sleep with visions of shimmering leaves and melodies of pure light. One afternoon, as the sun dipped towards the western horizon, painting the sky in hues of amethyst and rose, Elara found herself at the foot of a colossal, crystalline cliff. It shimmered with an inner light, humming with a low, resonant energy. The path seemed to vanish here, swallowed by the sheer, reflective surface. Doubt, a tiny, icy sliver, pricked at her resolve. How could she ascend this? As if in answer, a faint melody drifted on the Whisperwind, a sound like tiny, crystalline bells. From behind a veil of shimmering moss, a creature emerged. It was not large, perhaps the size of her hand, but it glowed with an internal light. Its body was delicate, like spun glass, with wings that beat with the swiftness of hummingbirds, leaving trails of starlight in their wake. A Sylvani spirit, she remembered from ancient tales, guardians of the highest peaks, guides to those with pure hearts. The Sylvani spirit circled her head once, its tiny bells chiming, then zipped towards the crystalline cliff. It hovered, and where its light touched the surface, faint, swirling patterns began to emerge, handholds and footholds, glowing gently. It was showing her the way, revealing a hidden path etched into the crystal itself, activated by the spirit's pure light. With renewed hope, Elara began to climb. The crystalline handholds felt cool and smooth beneath her fingers, and the path, though steep, felt secure. The Sylvani spirit danced ahead, a guiding star in the fading light, its melody filling her with courage. Hours passed as she ascended, the world falling away beneath her until she felt suspended between the earth and the heavens. Finally, as the first stars began to pepper the velvet sky, the Sylvani spirit hovered at a wide, flat ledge. Its light pulsed, and then, with a final chime, it dissolved into the air, its mission complete. Elara looked up. Before her, stretching out in a magnificent, awe-inspiring expanse, lay the sky mirror caldera. It was not a crater but a vast, shallow basin, its floor a colossal, perfectly still lake. And what a lake it was! It was not water, not exactly, but a liquid surface of pure, shimmering starlight, reflecting the entire cosmos above, with breathtaking clarity. Every star, every nebula, every sweep of the Milky Way was mirrored with such fidelity that it was impossible to tell where the real sky ended and its reflection began. The edges of the caldera were formed of polished obsidian-like rock, studded with veins of moonstone that pulsed with a soft, ethereal glow. The air here hummed with a profound, almost silent energy. It was the sound of ancient magic, of creation, of pure potential. This was the true heart of the Ethereum's connection to the world, a place where the veil was thinnest, where dreams could take root and grow into reality. Elara walked to the edge of the sky mirror lake, her steps hushed, reverent. She gazed into the starry depths, seeing not just the cosmos, but a reflection of her own journey, her own hopes, and the immense task ahead. In the very center of the lake, a small circular island of purest white earth floated, ringed by a faint pulsating aura. This was it. The place for the moon-silver seed. She knew instinctively that she couldn't simply walk across the sky mirror lake. It was a surface of pure light, not solid ground. As she pondered, a low, resonant hum vibrated through the air, emanating from the moonstone veins along the caldera's rim. The whisper-wind gathered itself, swirling gently around her, carrying tiny motes of starlight. The wind seemed to encourage her, to prompt her. Elara looked down at her satchel, then at the moon-silver thread coiled within. Of course. The thread, spun from the very essence of moonlight, would be her bridge. She carefully unwound a length, feeling its cool, smooth texture. With a deep breath, she held one end, and with a focused intention, she tossed the other end towards the small island in the center. The thread, imbued with her purpose, and the latent magic of the mountains, didn't fall. Instead, it straightened, shimmering, and then, impossibly, solidified into a narrow luminous pathway, stretching from the edge of the caldera to the island. It was like walking on a beam of pure moonlight. With her heart thrumming, Elara stepped onto the moon-silver bridge. Each step was gentle, deliberate. Below her, the reflected stars swirled and danced, making her feel as though she was walking through the very constellations. She reached the island, a small perfect circle of untouched luminous earth. It felt alive, warm beneath her bare feet. She knelt, carefully unwrapping the moon-silver seed from its dream moss cradle. The seed itself pulsed with a soft internal luminescence, mirroring the light of the caldera. It was not a seed of wood or earth, but of pure possibility, of starlight condensed into a tangible form. Elara held the seed in her open palm, closing her eyes for a moment. She focused all her intent, all her hope, all the courage that had carried her across the Whisperwind peaks into this single precious moment. She thought of the lost song of the Ethereum, of the silent forests, the muted magic, and the world yearning for harmony. She poured her own quiet strength, her love for the world, into the seed. Then, with a gentle, reverent motion, she placed the moon-silver seed into the center of the luminous earth. The moment the seed touched the soil, a ripple of pure energy spread across the island. The earth glowed brighter, pulsing with a deep, resonant hum that echoed the caldera's own ancient song. From the tiny seed, a faint, silvery light began to emanate, reaching out like invisible roots into the luminous earth. It wasn't a sudden explosion of magic, but a slow, deliberate awakening. The first whisper of life. The light intensified, growing into a delicate, ethereal sprout. It wasn't green, but a translucent, pearlescent white, shimmering with inner moonlight. It grew rapidly, not like a plant reaching for the sun, but like a melody unfurling, stretching upwards with an elegant, almost liquid grace. Within moments, the sprout had become a slender sapling, its trunk smooth and luminous, its branches unfurling like silver filigree. And then, the leaves. Each leaf was a miniature crescent moon, spun from pure starlight, catching and refracting the reflected cosmos from the sky mirror lake. As the sapling reached the height of a young tree, its growth slowed, then paused. It stood, breathtakingly beautiful, a living sculpture of light and magic. But it was silent. The song was still missing. Elara knew what she had to do. The seed held the potential, but the song needed to be sung back into existence, coaxed from the very heart of the new tree. She remembered the faint, crystalline, bell-like melody of the Sylvani spirit, the ancient whispers of the Whisperwind. She remembered the lullabies her own mother had sung, the simple, heartfelt melodies that connected her to the world. She closed her eyes again, taking a deep, centering breath. She reached deep within her own spirit, not for a learned song, but for the inherent melody that resided in her heart, the natural harmony of a soul connected to the world. She began to hum, a soft, wordless tune that was part lullaby, part hopeful prayer. As her humming filled the silent caldera, a faint, almost imperceptible vibration began to emanate from the moon-silver tree. It was a single note, pure, clear, like a drop of dew falling into a crystal chalice. Then another, and another, joining and weaving into a delicate, ethereal harmony. The song was not just sound. It was light, it was color, it was feeling. It began as a gentle silvery hum, rising and falling like the breath of the cosmos. It was the sound of stars twinkling, of moonbeams dancing on still water, of ancient stones sighing in contentment. The leaves of the moon-silver tree began to shiver, not with wind, but with the sheer joy of the melody. They chimed softly, like 1,000 tiny bells, adding their voices to the growing chorus. The luminous earth of the island pulsed with every note, sending ripples of silver light across the sky mirror lake. The reflected stars in the lake seemed to dance in time with the music, brighter, more vibrant than ever before. The song grew, expanding beyond the caldera's rim. It was carried by the very Whisperwind that had guided Elara here, a gentle wave of pure, harmonious energy spreading outwards. Across the Whisperwind peaks, the ancient stones that had stood in silent vigil for centuries began to resonate, their deep, low hum joining the melody. The Sylvani spirits, awakened from their slumber, danced in joyous spirals, their crystalline bells adding a sparkling counterpoint. The luminous mist that had veiled the lower valleys for so long began to part, not dispersing, but transforming. It became iridescent, shimmering with all the colors of the rainbow, revealing long-forgotten landscapes beneath, meadows of bioluminescent flowers, rivers that flowed with liquid light, forests where trees whispered secrets in a language only the wind understood. The song flowed into the rivers, making their waters sparkle with renewed vitality. It rustled through the leaves of every forest, coaxing forth vibrant new growth and forgotten birdsong. The very air tasted sweeter, cleaner, imbued with the Ethereum's light. Creatures that had once been muted, their colors dull, their magic faded, now glowed with an inner luminescence. Deer with antlers like polished emeralds grazed in meadows of amethyst grass. Fireflies danced in intricate patterns, painting ephemeral pictures in the night sky. The world began to breathe again, deeply, fully, drinking in the revitalizing melody. And the Ethereum itself, that vast invisible ocean of pure magic that surrounded and sustained the world, responded. The moon-silver tree's song was like a beacon, a clear, strong signal that pierced through the static of imbalance. From the Ethereum, a gentle golden rain of pure magic began to drift down, soft as pollen, settling on every living thing, reweaving the strands of magic that had frayed and faded. Elara stood on the island, bathed in the growing glory of the moon-silver tree's song. Tears, not of sadness but of profound joy and wonder, tracked paths down her cheeks, catching the silver light. She felt a connection to everything, to the tree, to the mountains, to the shimmering lake, to the vast living Ethereum, and to every blade of grass and every distant star. She was a conduit, a catalyst, but the true magic belonged to the world itself, awakened and renewed. The moon-silver tree, now fully mature, stood tall and magnificent, its trunk glowing with the soft radiance of a full moon, its leaves like 1,000 silver chimes ringing out the purest melody. It was a bridge between worlds, a living conduit for the Ethereum's song, forever singing its harmony into the heart of the world. Elara had fulfilled her purpose. The song of the Ethereum was back, not as a whisper, but as a vibrant, continuous symphony. She knew her journey was complete, yet a new one had just begun. A journey of living in a world re-enchanted, a world where the music of magic would never again fade. As the sun rose, painting the eastern sky in hues of soft pearl and rose, its light mingled with the silver glow of the moon-silver tree. The sky mirror caldera shimmered, a jewel reflecting both the dawn and the remnants of the night stars. Elara felt a deep, abiding peace settle in her heart. She was tired, but gloriously so, filled with the warmth of a dream made real. She knew she would not leave the caldera immediately. She would rest, she would listen to the new song of the world, and she would simply be in this sacred space for a time. But eventually, she would descend, carrying the echo of the moon-silver tree's song in her heart, ready to share its wonder with a world now ready to hear it. The stars above began to dim, but the moon-silver tree shone ever brighter, a promise of enduring magic, a lullaby for the waking world. And as Elara finally allowed herself to sit, leaning against the warm, luminous earth of the island, she closed her eyes, letting the gentle, harmonious song of the Ethereum cradle her into a peaceful, well-earned slumber, knowing that the world was now safe and filled with magic once more. She had brought the song back, and it would sing on, forever.